So Connie, can you take a moment and let our audience know a little bit about you?
Oh, where do I begin? I worked for how many? 50, 60 years in retirement. I had been in Strasbourg 50 years before as a study abroad program from Penn State. And so it kind of got under my skin. 2018, I reconnected with some other friends that were here during my student years, came back in 2019 for 3 weeks. And when I left then, I'm like, I want to come back. But I'd been working and I was ready to retire, and I was in a home with 6/10 of an acre outside of Washington, D.C. And I thought, this isn't where I want to spend all my life. And I thought, is it possible to retire in France? And then COVID hit and things got delayed a bit, but I used that time, researched, and my family was very supportive, and they're all like, we're proud of you, Connie, and go for it, and help me fulfill my dream. I have friends that have come visit me here since. A good friend came with me when I moved, so it's always been important that I wasn't coming here to be, as you said, there's no isolation, and trying to just move on, improve, see what else I could do in the future, and keep.
So there was a big gap between when you came here from Penn State and when you came back and decided to move here. How many years is there in the middle of that?
40.
40 a 40-year gap from when she first came here and fell in love and when she came back and began the process of moving. I can relate to that because way before I met Antoine, I wanted to move to Paris. Like I knew, like this has to be my life, you know. And I know a lot of people come here and have an experience and they say, I want to go and live there. And some of them mean it. Some of them want to come back and stay on a permanent vacation. I can get that. But it was the same for me. It was, another 30 years or so before I came to live here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I started taking French in 7th grade, took it all the way through middle school, high school. It was my major in college, and then never used it until near the last year or two of my work career.
When I came to live in France, my vocabulary and everything was about what most people might think they should have when they come to France. So you can move here with or without speaking the language. It's a lot easier if you do.
Yeah.
So Connie, Gail Barnes-Schwartz wants to know, how is France for retirees?
Oh, it's wonderful. I came here at the age of 69, and so many people at that age are thinking I'm sitting at home in the rocking chair, but I was ready for adventure. The transportation is great. You don't need a car. You can get around. The medical care, there are some medical deserts depending where you live, but I had no problem finding medical treatment, getting my carte vitale. My Social Security goes directly into my bank account here. I can live well on Social Security.
Awesome.
Life is good.
So Connie, you mentioned medical desert. What do you mean by that?
Well, there are some areas of France, especially in the small villages, where they may have had one main doctor and he retires and they have trouble finding replacements. They may not have all of the specialists available.
Okay.
Where I live in Strasbourg, that's not an issue. Paris, there are obviously plenty of medical facilities, but it just depends on where you live.
And it's not just in small villages either, because we live, just in a suburb of Paris, and I struggled to find a gynecologist when I moved here because, none of them were taking new patients. And so it's not just the small towns. There's like a lot of places. People don't want to be doctors. Maybe that's a COVID thing, but you can find places where it's tough to find specialists. Can I retire if I show proof of income? Can I get health coverage for emergencies, routine checkups? Is there an area of France that's better suited for an expat community than others?
Okay, part 1, 2, 3. Yes, you can get coverage, and you can retire here. Sorry, that was the first one. If you're coming as a retiree and not working without an income in France or elsewhere, you just need to show that you make at least the SMIC, which is the equivalent of minimum wage, and that you can live on that. Show 3 months bank statements so they can see a history, Social Security statements, investment income, and there was no problem for me.
Okay. You have to show, if you're renting an apartment, I think you have to show 3 times what the minimum wage is. So
Yes.
it's like that you could live for 3 months is what you have to prove to get a place.
Well, you have to show that what your income is 3 times what your rent would be.
Okay.
So, if you earn $2,000 a month in your Social Security, obviously you're not going to get an apartment for $1,500 a month and be approved.
Well, that would be foolish on both sides.
Yes.
Another question that I'm going to ask is, do you find that the cost of living, for an apartment rental, for food, for electricity, mobile phone, and everything, is the cost of living here the same that you found it in the U.S.?
No, I find it much less. I have my phone, I pay 20 euros a month, and that's unlimited, that's everything. What I was paying in the US.
Can you say that again?
20 euros a month.
For mobile phone service.
Actually, it started at 13, but after a year it goes to 20, and that includes 5G coverage. And
Okay.
It's good. I can use that in the United States too.
Oh, cool.
And then I also ported my old number to Google Voice so I can still keep, for those my family and friends that are used to that number.
Do you feel isolated? Like you moved here alone, right? You didn't come here with a partner,
No.
with kids or
No.
anybody. You moved here alone. Do you feel isolated from, having a community of friends and coworkers and everything back in the States? How was that for you in terms of loneliness?
Well, I obviously miss my friends and family in the U.S. I didn't leave the U.S. to run away. It was the life here I was coming to. And in fact, for me, I had studied here 50 years ago. So I had some friends that were still in the area. So I had a base, and I had a very dear friend that, because of situation with his health, ended up, I have now very dear second French family, and that has enabled me to meet even more and more French people. Now, I spoke French fairly fluently, so that really was a big help rather than coming here. But we also have, in where I live, very active Americans in Alsace group. So there are the expats and Americans and Canadians in that group.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of places around France, obviously not in all of the small villages, because there's 35,000 or more small villages, but there are definitely areas where there are good size expat communities, in Paris, throughout, the Provence area, Nice, and all of that. There's a lot. In Normandy, there's a lot, but, in our town, there are a lot. But it's reasonable in many places to find that. And one of the questions was about, is there an area of France that's better suited for expat communities?
It depends on, well, obviously, whether you speak French or not, it helps. But I think Paris and Nice are the most heavily populated areas for expats. But where I'm at in Strasbourg, there are a lot. And there is a university there, so are a lot of events and opportunities. I don't know specifically all the other areas. I know there are areas that have a heavy British population for English speakers.
Yeah, in Bordeaux, there's a big English-speaking population. In Normandy, you're going to find that. And Nice and Paris are the best. If you don't speak French, it's going to be really hard to integrate. The way that you make friends in the U.S. isn't what happens here. If you don't speak the language, it's going to be really tough. So, definitely finding that expat community is a good thing. And, and there are resources for that online. You can find different expat groups and whatnot. Jay Swanson, who we also have in this video, is really great about that. And, you can find it, and you don't have to be in the big city. You can save the expense of, you can have the expense of living in a smaller town near the big city. But if you don't speak French, you're going to need that.
Yeah.
Linda Berry says, I'm 80 and I never traveled outside the U.S. My kids took me to Paris for 5 days and it just wasn't enough for me. I understand that. Is it possible or probable that someone my age could move to Paris for 1 year alone?
Well, I would say bravo to you. Go for it. Absolutely. I mean, it depends on your health There's a
Mhm.
lot of walking.
Mhm.
If you have serious mobility issues, it might be difficult. A lot of the apartments don't have elevators.
Mhm.
But the culture, the food, the atmosphere, the opportunities, I wouldn't, in my position, I did not want to look back at some future time and say, gee, I wish I'd done that.
Yeah.
So I'd say go for it. It's
Yeah.
possible. It is possible. And if you get a long-term visitor visa that's good for a year,
Mhm.
you can, after 3 months, apply to be in the health system too.
After how long?
After 3 months. Did I say 3 years?
I don't know. I was just making sure that I heard right.
No, 3 months.
Okay. Yeah, and we address that. For 1 year, it's pretty easy to do that, and just so for if you just want to stay for 1 year, it's pretty easy to do that with the visas and whatnot. But it depends on what kind of 80 you are. It sounds like you had a great time. I know 60-year-olds that are a lot worse shape than some
Yeah.
80-year-olds. So if
true.
you're feeling up to it, it's definitely something that you can do. And I think that in France, there's a different kind of respect for older people here.
Mhm.
That there are things to do that people would be more likely to defer to your wisdom and in your age, and then to think of you as just an old person. I think that's true.
Yeah, I do. I agree.
So Belinda Ross wants to know, she has a two-part question, and I think we answered number one already, but is there an age which a move there is not realistic? No, but number two, how difficult is it to rent an apartment, and which area has the most rentals?
Well, for me, I didn't have a problem because I initially found an apartment I liked online through one of the sites. I emailed the landlord and I gave him a little bit of description of what I was planning to do, and he wrote me back, said, you sound like the perfect tenant. I'll be glad to show you the apartment. I set up a contract and found the apartment I loved. And so I had my rental contract before I even applied for my visa, which was great. I didn't have to do a
Simplifies
temporary
it.
Airbnb. And I was happy there. I lived there for a year. But at the end of the year, normally contracts just automatically renew. But his nephew was starting at the university. And so landlords can recover the apartment if they themselves or their family members are going to live there legally. He gave me 4 months notice, so I had plenty of notice, and gave me a great letter of referral. But
How
then
did you
as
find the
I
next
looked,
place?
well, I found some I liked. There are two types of rentals. One is a 1 year if it's a furnished apartment, and it's 3 years if it's unfurnished. And so I found one that I liked in the same area. It was unfurnished, but I was ready to go 3 years because my plan is to stay here. And I even had an approval for a guarantee on my rent, which is often needed, especially through the agencies, especially for Americans, because you don't have proof of a French income, or if you don't have a French bank account. But I was pre-approved. For one reason or another, that one wasn't approved, but fortuitously on Facebook, I saw a woman in Strasbourg asking if anyone was looking for a studio apartment. Yes, and I went to see it, talked to her. We're actually the same age, and she speaks French and English and had worked in the US, worked at the Council of Europe, but it was perfect for me. So I moved, and now I'm on my second year, the rollover in that apartment, and couldn't be happier.
You mentioned you found your apartment on the websites. Are these websites in English? What websites or what kind of websites were you looking at?
Yes, they're Se Loger, Le Bon Coin. I went through Morning Croissant, and they are in French or English, and you can enter the city you're interested in, what size house or apartment, how many bedrooms, and it'll help you narrow it down.
So I know Bon Coin because we found our place on Bon Coin, which is kind of like Offer Up in French. And I think that one's only in French, isn't it?
Le Bon Coin,
Yeah.
I think it is. Yeah.
That may be, yeah.
Yeah, so you mentioned one with a croissant.
Morning Croissant.
Morning Croissant may be a good one for Americans to look at.
I know a friend that has hers through Morning Croissant, and everything, all of the utilities are all included in
Mhm.
her monthly payment, and she's very happy with it.
Awesome. I want to ask, nobody else is asking here because, I'm probably being nice. Um, do you have income besides Social Security living here?
Actually, I don't have any regular income. I'm not working. Part of my visa says that I would sign a letter saying I will not work while I'm here. But I mean, I sold my house in the United States and I have a 401k account, but I've left it until I'm 75. If I don't need to pull out money from that account, I'd rather leave it. I have an account that I can pull from if I need to, but I rarely do. Or if I'm back in the United States traveling, that's in US dollars, so it's still an account in US. But I don't, month to month, I'm living on Social Security alone.
So the point I want to make is, do you have to be rich to move to France?
I'm not rich. I'm proof of that.
Okay. Carrie Buda Ross wants to know, how do we get access to collect our US Social Security benefits and reside in France? How do you do that?
Well, in my case, I started collecting Social Security at my full retirement age of 66 while I was still in the US. I originally planned to wait until I was 70 because I thought that's where it would max out, but I learned that I was still working, and because that year of work was one of my higher earning years, that increased my Social Security. I left that in the bank and so I was already getting a monthly check directly deposited into my American account. But then when I moved here, I was able to, through the embassy or in Paris, they arranged for you to have direct deposit into your French bank account. And it actually, for all Social Security deposits in France, they go on the 3rd of the month, every month, rather than a certain date according to your age or your name, as it is in the US.
Cool. So did you have to make an appointment at the embassy or anything?
No, I did it all by email.
All by email, in English, nice and easy.
Yep. Easy peasy.
Good to know. William Turnier wants to know, what about medical services? Americans should be especially concerned about the non-portability nature of Medicare.
Well, because I came here right after I retired, I had never had Part B of Medicare. Obviously, I signed up for Part A at 65. But because it would not cover me in France, I never paid the extra money. Now, it was a decision. I had the option to pay it, even though it didn't cover me. Should I return to the US? If you don't have Part B and you live in France 5 years and then you return, it's a 10% penalty, an increase in your premium for every year that you don't have it. But I thought my plan is to stay here, and rather than pay $170 or whatever it is a month, what I saved, it may equal out to what the increased cost may be should I have to go back for some reason. But I'm covered completely. I have the French medical coverage, a carte vitale. My medical history is such that I had cancer years ago, so they automatically cover me for, it's an attestation de longue durée, which means for long-term coverage. I have 100% coverage for anything that's directly related to the cancer treatment that I need. Just as for me, it's only annual blood work and checkups and x-rays that is taken care of.
Cool. Another thing, I know when people come here on a visa, you have to have proof of some medical coverage when you arrive. But what I can say is, for instance, when I got here, I went to see the chiropractor after all the move, the flight and everything. And they apologized that I had to pay 40 euros to get my chiropractic treatment. So, when you come here and you're getting services, even that are not covered, it's generally fairly close to your copay anyway. So I think that's worth noting as well. Debbie Parker wants to know, what is the best way to try and get past the honeymoon period before making the final commitment to permanently move to France?
I'll let you know when the honeymoon's over. But no, seriously, there are challenges. The prefecture and the French bureaucracy, and you have to learn your first year that you file taxes
Mhm.
and renew your visa every year. And after 5 years, you can apply to get a 10-year long
Mhm.
visa or try to go for citizenship.
Mhm.
But there are challenges, obviously, as anywhere. I've
Mhm.
moved in the US before and had challenges finding a new doctors, finding where the best grocery store is.
Mhm.
But each time I did this or it's check. Okay, I was successful at that. It's okay, I've got my new annual visa, and it's like it's a feeling that you've accomplished something on your own and I can do this.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think, what Antoine and I always tell people is, come and stay for 3 months, come and stay for a year, do the short term.
Yeah.
Antoine says stay through a winter, and I think maybe some people want to know is, does that mean it's cold? It's not because it's cold, it's because the days are really short and it's dark. And so I think it depends on what kind of honeymoon you're on, because some people are, here like in the la la land of, oh my God, I'm in Paris. And some people are here just, living the hotel life, which is, or an Airbnb
Yeah.
life, which is very different than, being in a home. But if you're here thinking, oh my God, I'm just gonna, wander through the terraces and go to the museums and stuff, you're gonna probably have a tougher time with the honeymoon than somebody who is here just, going through the daily living of things. So I think it's more of a personal question, but definitely spend some time.
Yeah, and definitely like different times of the year when the tourists are gone and the town's virtually shut down, or if you're in a tourist area and a lot of restaurants may be closed, or if it's a ski area and everything's closed in the summer.
Yeah, and a lot of Paris is going to be open most of the year, and there are random closings. We do have, strikes. You've heard about the strikes. But, there are, protests or whatnot. But, there are things that are going on here that you should know about before you commit. And so spend a year, spend a winter, 6 months, whatever it is. You can do the 6 months without even getting a special visa. But spend some time. You're going to know for yourself if you're not doing all of the things that you've seen on Emily in Paris. You'll probably have a better chance of it. If you're looking for the Emily in Paris life, or where's my beret and baguette? We don't eat croissants every day. Let's just say there's just a day-to-dayness of it, and if you need to experience that before you commit, there's a name. I'm going to call you Mimi, Mimi Russian Zamir. This is a question about taxation. If you decide to move before or after retirement, do you pay income tax in both countries? Do you get taxed on your retirement plan in both countries?
Well, it depends on what country you're coming from. I only can address the U.S. because I know that the U.S. and France have a tax treaty, whereas if you're paying tax on your retirement, you have to file both places. But if you're taxed on whatever you file in your retirement in the U.S., you would file that you've had that amount paid, and then you don't pay in France.
Okay, but you do have to, excuse me, you do have to file French taxes even if you don't owe any French taxes.
Correct.
And you file in the U.S. and you're taxed as you would be taxed in the U.S. normally.
Right.
That's simple. Did it make a difference? Well, you only can speak to after retirement.
Right. I didn't come with any income, so I would leave that to a tax consultant or professional.
This is just our experience and our opinion, so definitely
Yes.
definitely check with a professional if you have
Asterisk.
So, Connie, knowing what you know, knowing all of the hoops and the administrative challenges that there are in the French system, which there are many, do you have any regrets about moving to France?
Absolutely none. It just keeps getting better and better. Case in point is meeting you guys in January. It's been it's like something great is always happening not every day, but just about. I love the opportunity to visit the country. It is so vast in so many different areas. I love the people I'm meeting. I love good wine. I love good restaurants. I love discovering new museums. I feel more fulfilled now, and that I have the time not working. But it's life. La vie est belle.
And you live in Strasbourg. How long does it take you to get into Paris?
Less than 2 hours on the TGV. And for anyone that wants to do it, I try and do every monthly meetup with the Frenchies because it's so easy to get here.
Awesome. Awesome. How much does it cost to take the high-speed train, the TGV, or the high-speed train from Strasbourg to Paris?
Well, it depends on when you book the train. If you book it farther in advance, it's cheaper. I don't remember what it was exactly. I think it was less than 60 euro, 50, 60 euros. I just booked a train that's going to CDG airport from Strasbourg for November, and it was 40 euros. But I have a senior discount.
That's another question I wanted to ask you about, because in France, probably all of Europe, but in France, students get a lot of benefits, but seniors get a lot of benefits too. What kind of places is it useful for you to be a senior in France?
Well, on the train, I have a discount card for both the TGV or SNCF, the French rail system, and also for the local TER trains, so that I get a minimum of 30% discount on my rides on both. The card costs 50 euros a year, but twice a year they offer it at 25 euros. So if you take advantage of that, and it pays for itself on my first trip to Paris usually. So I have museum passes. I don't remember that I've gotten those as a senior or just like the carte blanche. I use a lot for Musée d'Orsay and the Orangerie. I skip that long line. I go to the front and go in, and I can use it. I have a card that's good for 2 people. I can go how many times I want to go, as often as I like, for a year.
Awesome.
And with a guest. So I like that one. There are, obviously other passes, museum passes and things, but they're not. I haven't looked if there's a difference for seniors or just for general on that.
So Connie, thank you so much for opening your life, sharing your adventures so that our audience can, see what you've gone through and help them to make decisions for themselves. And you are active in our Le Frenchies Travel Facebook group. So if anybody wants to ask you questions about your experience, she's not a professional, but about your experience, are you open to them asking?
Absolutely. I'd love to share the wealth.
Awesome. Well, there you have it. Connie has answers for anybody who wants to retire here. Thank you so much.
Gladly. Thank you.